On this video, I talk about the difficulties of dating, especially if you have a history of attachment injuries, attachment wounds, and maybe even the symptoms of attachment trauma. I'm Alan Robarge, an attachment-focused psychotherapist and a relationship educator, and I like to talk about how we heal attachment wounds and also improve our relationships. And this video, let's dive into dating. And if you clicked on this video, if you're watching this video, I'm going to assume that dating is a bit bumpy, is perhaps not going that well, and maybe even you're watching this right now when you're feeling activated, your nervous system is agitated or triggered, and you are noticing some degrees of anxiety or attachment distress. So empathy to you, I can understand the need to get clarity and make sense of what's going on. And I also have empathy for knowing how challenging maneuvering dating can be. So that's why I'm making this video, to throw out some ideas, to at least create a framework to normalize that many of us experience in a very short period of time having our attachment wounds activated, especially in the early stages of meeting someone who it can feel wonderful, and at the same time it's so fresh and new, and we have no real reference point or trust built up, and we don't really know the direction of where this dating is going. There is not a lot of guarantees. And in the early stages of getting to know someone, we also have to keep reminding ourselves that they are a stranger to us, and that this can really provoke feelings of not being safe and provoke feelings of questioning trust. So again, empathy, I can understand how this really activates you. Let's talk about what's referred to as the negative cycle. And perhaps you are aware of attachment dynamics, and we can reduce attachment dynamics down to sort of two very specific behaviors of either moving towards the person that we want to connect with or moving away from. Now, let's normalize this and say, well, isn't that normal for all of us all the time? What does normal mean here? I mean, I know that that's a difficult word and there's a lot of baggage, but let's just say within a realm of basic understanding, basic agreement of the nature of how human interactions unfold, and that what we would consider to be commonplace, and that's what I mean by normal. I mean, like, it's pretty common to notice, regardless of what's going on in a particular relationship, that the two people come together, and then they also take a break and they separate. They come together, and after a period of time, they take a break and separate. Now, this could be very literally, let's say you're starting to date and you see each other on the weekend, you have 2 days, a lot of intensity together, and then by Sunday evening, by Monday morning, you're really feeling like, okay, I got to pull away, I need some separation, I need some distance. All of us, most of us, I mean, how do I know? I can't speak for all of us, but it's pretty common that we experience a particular tension, an internal tension regarding a desire to want to merge with another person. That what's often referred to as, well, we became one. And a very easy, simple example that we know of this is sexual relating. When you have a sexual connection and it's going great and it feels great and you feel really close and there's a lot of intimacy being shared, it blurs the boundaries, it blurs the lines between your sense of self and the other person. And we say ego strength, ego boundaries, ego construct, not so much ego strength, but ego construct begins to dissolve a little bit. And for some of us, we can say, Well, that's actually an experience of surrender. That's an experience of joining. That is an experience of closeness. And that's an experience of feeling like we're not alone in this world. It's an experience of being able to let another person in. So this is pretty common. And again, what I mean by this word normal is that we desire these experiences with a significant other, with a partner, someone we're dating, where we don't have to pretend to hold it all together. And we don't have to manage our outward presentation as much. And I'm sure you're familiar with the phrase and the idea to say that, well, I got to see the other person behind the mask. They got to see me. They got to see my vulnerability behind the mask. And that what's really beautiful about intimacy is this dropping of the layers of how we package ourselves, present ourselves. We're very much a PR machine, a public relations machine. We're always working on our branding and leading with certain aspects of persona and how people see us. And one of the beauty of dating and meeting someone is that you can experiment with dropping some of that persona presentation, or you get to bring out aspects of who you are that you perhaps are a bit more guarded with. But with this one particular person, it could be more than one person, but in this moment, to simplify, let's just say it's one other person that you're attracted to and they're attracted to you, and you're both slowly revealing yourself to each other. Isn't that beautiful? Now, those of us with some history of attachment injuries find this process of softening, of ego boundaries beginning to dissolve. We're becoming more one. We are leading with our vulnerability. We're not hiding behind as many masks. And there's an aspect of this, there's this internal tension between maintaining a sense of differentiation, which means a sense of individuality as a self, but then also the great desire to be able to come together and merge and have this experience of not being alone. Most of us don't want to live here 24/7, and that we would consider staying at this completely merged experience to be not so helpful and not so healthy, and that we can even move in the direction and say, hey, guess what? I think this is codependency, and I think that this is actually kind of dysfunctional way of relating. And so naturally, we're going to want to be able to take a break, to release, to separate, and to be really two separate individuals living your life, and you're able to stay available to each other, you're able to be open to each other, and you're able to acknowledge that there's going to be a returning, a coming back to let's reconnect and come from separation back into connection. Now, the challenge is that many of us don't trust this closeness and separation. For some of us, this closeness begins to present and show up as an attachment distress, as almost like being held down. So notice even this gesture that I'm making. Some people experience this as like a clamp, like a claw, beginning, holding you in, capturing you. And when this happens, we're not going to feel comfortable in this space where our nervous system is going to be all activated. We are going to want to immediately need more distance, gotta got to create distance. And depending on the brevity, the intensity, the frequency that we're close, and then all of a sudden we're not close. We're pushing away, we're separating. The other person can experience this as them being pushed away in a very dramatic, hurtful way. Now, the same thing as opposite, if we're thinking of moving towards the person we're interested in or moving away from them, that it's also very possible that when we are in this very common, accepted, we need some separation to engage the differentiated aspects of who we are as individuals. But when we're separated, what might happen is that feels frightening to a number of us with attachment injuries. It's very frightening that we're out here all alone and that there hasn't been a checking in. There hasn't been a asking you how you're doing. There hasn't been a communication of, well, when are we actually going to get back together and have dinner and spend time getting to know each other like we did 2 weekends ago or last weekend or whatever the frequency is. Part of the reason why dating is so stressful is that the couple hasn't quite figured out or negotiated what exactly is our frequency of getting together and taking a break and separating and getting together. Now, this also doesn't mean literally getting together. It means, well, how frequently are we talking on the phone? If you do video chat like Zoom or any kind of video chat, is that it creates the ability to see each other. And this can also comfort our nervous system and really help us feel safe and be able to build trust. But if there's not communication around when are we going to take time to return to connecting with each other, this uncertainty is what creates stress. Now, the stress, the distress, can show up differently. For one partner, more of the pursuer type partner, it evidences as a kind of anxiety and feeling very anxious. And there is an orientation again to, well, we got to get back together. Let's have dinner. Let's make plans. Are you free tomorrow? Let's get together. What are you doing now? I can drive over and just, we can hang out for a little bit. It's really this urgency to help the nervous system calm down by being able to be with the person that we're starting to care about. And because we have a history where the person that we're caring about is not really that reliable and hasn't really been safe in the past. And so now that we're with a new person, we're going into this very cautiously, saying, I don't really know if this person's reliable and if it's safe. And the way that we're going to test that out is we really want to err on the side of more maximizing. Let's really increase the amount of time that we're together and being with each other, because that's just going to really give us a lot of data that says, okay, good, they're available. Okay, good, they're emotionally sharing. Okay, good, they are responding to my bids for connection. Okay, good, they're listening. Oh, good, they're asserting their self and letting me know that they have a point of view, etc., etc. Now, that's the maximal approach, more of a pursuer. A distancer, someone who more errs on the side of needing to employ some avoidance, being more avoidantly attached, prolong the separation. So might not text as frequently, might not communicate needs and feelings up front, might not return phone calls quickly, might leave plans open-ended in a way that leaves the other person guessing if are we getting together or not. And then when feelings are shared, there's a deflection, a sidestepping. Let's not call attention to a direct emotional conversation has just been presented. And instead of presenting it, let's perhaps create a rule that says, hey, let's not talk about these things now. Let's just have fun and hang out and watch TV. And how about when it's not a work night? Then we might have more conversations, maybe, about, our relating. This need to impose rules and structure in order to help manage internally what feels out of control shows up as externally needing to control how we get together, how we talk about things, the frequency in which we talk about things. And this can be incredibly confusing because both people in this dynamic, in this exchange, both people are really making up their own rules. They're setting the stage, they're setting the tone, they're setting the protocol of how we're going to engage in order to manage one's individual, our individual attachment distress. But if we are beginning to engage this negative cycle with someone who is more of, if we ourselves are a pursuer, that person's a distancer, or if we ourselves are the distancer and that person's the pursuer, we're immediately starting to feed this kind of negative cycle. And the reason why it's called a negative cycle is because when a pursuer begins to pursue even more, then the distancer will retreat even more. Or the opposite, if the distancer takes a step back and is even less available, then that's also going to activate the pursuer and make them want to try harder to say, hey, wait a minute, where are you going? 2 weekends ago, we just had this really lovely, wonderful connection, and now all of a sudden you're checked out. And my nervous system's on fire here, and this is creating an incredible amount of confusion. And we haven't really established, are there any rules here? Are there any shared agreed values that we could actually talk about these things? And we're going to find that oftentimes those who are a bit more preoccupied, anxious, we would consider the pursuer. Those of us who fall into that category really want to talk about these things. And say, let's begin to compartmentalize it. Let's make sense of it. And then for those of us who more err on the side of being a distancer, someone who would be referred to as more avoidantly attached, is not going to be as quick to get on board with verbalizing their own internal feelings. Oftentimes what's going on for all of us is that internally we have experienced an activation through intimacy and through vulnerability, that those are in fact the gateways. It is that vulnerability that we love, or in the moment we like, or that we're experimenting with, and that's why we want to be in relationship. But then it feels unsafe. It's too much, and that vulnerability creates attachment distress, and that's then how we begin to behave in ways that are going to try to get our attachment needs met by managing the distress that the intimacy is creating. So at that point, we're not really practicing engaging from a neutral place, from an experimental place, from a shared agreed place of let's practice getting to know each other. Instead, now we're trying to jockey, position ourselves and respond and maneuver in a way to manage this distress. And sometimes managing that distress can do the complete opposite of why we're even dating. It can undermine trust. It can diminish safety. It can hurt the other person. It can ruin relationships, ruin brand new relationships that just started. So this video, there's so much more to talk about in these dating dynamics, and I'm going to keep going and make more videos. I like to make videos in a series. I don't necessarily number the series, but for me to organize this, I am calling it my dating series. And there's going to be more videos to follow. Please do all of the things if you like this video, if you like the content, if you've liked the effort that I put in to help you out here, then please help me out and do what I say. Do all the things we have heard 800 times from every YouTube video, which is please subscribe to this channel, click the notification bell, and also click like on this video. That really helps these videos get circulated so that this good information gets out. Lastly, same thing I said when I started this video, empathy to you. If you're watching it, chances are it's because you're in a place of feeling some emotional distress and attachment distress. So take a deep breath, take care of yourself, and take a step back and begin to know that what's happening here for many of us, and maybe perhaps for you, is these insecure attachment dynamics start taking over, and we are now behaving out of our woundedness. We are behaving out of our attachment trauma, and we're no longer able to show up in a more neutral, grounded, boundaried, differentiated sense of self. We have lost our ability to stay in that grounded space. So when that happens, that's healing, that's therapy, that's this ongoing process of really being able to identify your patterns, being able to know what skills you need, and be able to verbalize and talk about how these dynamics show up in your relationships. I'm a firm believer, and I know it's not everyone's style, but I am a firm believer we need to be open with each other. We need to be open with our partner to say, hey, guess what? These attachment dynamics and this attachment distress inevitably, I can guarantee, will show up and will influence our behavior, will influence how we get close, and will also influence how we push each other away, avoid each other, and separate. And since we know that that's pretty inevitable for those of us with attachment wounds and attachment trauma, I just think it makes sense that very early on, we do not hide the fact that this is showing up in our life and that we have some history of attachment wounds, and say, you know what? Let's just be really transparent and open about this, to do our best to accommodate, to offer empathy, to offer compassion and gentleness and kindness, and really have a sensitivity for those of us who start pursuing more and for those of us who start pulling back, distancing, and avoiding more. So thank you for listening. More videos coming soon.